It's not every day you get a phone call asking you to do an urgent full bike restoration, but that's exactly what happened with this 1983 Honda CR480. I'm going to show you how I turned these boxes of bits into this stunning 1983 Honda CR480 in just 5 weeks. Simon wanted to have the bike restored for his brother Dave's birthday in just 5 weeks. Mark Eastwood from Eastwood Honda, his local dealer, had given him my details. Thanks Eastwood Honda, I really appreciate the recommendation. Can it be done? Was the question. Probably, but it will be a tough job, I replied. So the following day, Simon set off at 4 AM on the 6-hour drive to drop the bike off in boxes for me to make a start. In the bits were parts of other bikes, including parts from 82 CR480 and 84 CR500 and some 125 bits too. Because of this, I had to be really careful about which parts I used in the restoration. Anyway, the story is that this was Dave's bike back in the 80s. He'd started the rebuild years ago, but life got in the way and so the build stalled, which happens so often with these things. The frame had already been powder coated. The engine had been fully rebuilt and coated, but the engine had started to corrode and the powder coat had started to flake off. So the first job is to strip the engine, have it recoated and rebuild it. It's a good job that the coating had started flaking, because when I got in there, the crank was very tight. The big end bearing was almost seized solid, and there was no side clearance in it. Okay, so this is the piston that's in the bike. I've got a picture of the barrel. There's bits of marks on there, but I haven't felt any like gouges or anything, so probably just a hone would do that, would sort that out. Now then, when I lifted the barrel off, I wanted to turn the conrod so I could feel the feel if there's any play in the big end, and it wouldn't move, so I've had to get a socket, a ratchet on the end of the crank, and then I've been able to move it. But as you can see, it's stuck solid. So that's the big end, that. Now, so a couple of things. There should be some side-to-side movement, which is for the clearance, but I can't see any. But also, it's just stuck solid. I don't know whether you saw that there. But basically, that big end bearing will be knackered. So, at a minimum, the crank's going to need rebuilding. I'm going to suggest it needs a new piston as well. There were other bearing problems too, so it needed full new bearing kit throughout. This motor could never have run as it was, or it would have caused a lot of damage. I stripped the motor and the casings. The barrel and the head went off to my good mates Oliver and Peter, who got them all dipped, blasted and powder coated for me. So now a bit of a wait, as the engine would take a while to get back from coating. I needed to obtain a conrod, which isn't the easiest thing to come by, as it isn't made by any of the main manufacturers anymore. I also needed to order things like gaskets and stuff like that, which to be fair are readily available from one of my suppliers in America, so that was good news. When the casings came back from being coated, I was still waiting on the conrod, so it was pointless starting that rebuild. Instead, I made a start on the suspension. The forks first, stripped, cleaned up and rebuilt with new seals, bushes, oil and of course gaiters to make it look the part. When the conrod finally arrived and I had everything, I needed, I made a start on the rebuild. All new bearings pressed into the cases, new conrod pressed into the crank and the correct side clearance spec, and then I trued it up. I was then able to assemble the bottom end of the engine, gearbox, crank, clutch, etc. With these big bore two-strokes, I like to install the bottom end into the frame first and then assemble the top end when it's in place. I find it's easier and there's less chance of scratching any painted or coated surfaces. Once the bottom end was built, things started to come together, but at this point we only had about 2 weeks left, which isn't a lot of time at all. All the new parts arrived and the tank came back from being restored by Adrian Turnbull. He did a top job, as he always does. The next big job was the wheels, and these caused me some pain. The hubs had been powder coated by Oliver and looked great. I'd not been able to get a set of spokes for the back wheel from my normal supplier, so I'd had to order these from a dealer in Europe. They arrived in good time and the wheel build went really well. Recoated hubs, stainless spokes and new rims, new tubes, Motion Pro Light Lock rim locks and MIG compound Metzeler tyres. It looked beautiful. Happy days. When I came to build the front, I discovered the spokes were wrong. Absolute nightmare. There were none in stock from our regular supplier, so again onto the European dealer who sent them out quickly. But again, it was a few days wait, and that was going to take me into the final week. I put the rear wheel back in the bike and I put an old front wheel I had lying around so the bike could go on my ramp and the engine could be fitted. It's starting to look like a bike again, but still lots and lots of work to do. With the bottom end in the frame, we can now get the top end put back together. So first, a fresh Wassner piston in there. My favourites. In my opinion, Wassner make the best two-stroke pistons, without doubt. And the freshly honed barrel back on. Lovely job. Doesn't it look lovely there in the frame? Starting to look really nice. Now that's in, let's get the carb cleaned, jetted back to factory settings and installed. The original airbox was cleaned out meticulously and any metal parts were removed and polished up. This went back on the bike, completing the intake portion of the engine. Next job is to get the rear shock rebuilt. I've been waiting on a new bladder hose from K-Tech. Otherwise, I would have done this earlier. All the shock components were stripped, cleaned up in the ultrasonic cleaner, and then new parts were installed. New bump stop, new seal head, new bladder, new hose, fresh oil and gas, and finally powder coated spring on there. It does really look good on the bike, and now that's in place, the DG front pipe can go back on. This had gone all rusty from sitting, but a couple of hours with a wire wheel attachment on my die grinder and some polishing mops saw it looking $1 million again. This bike is starting to look really good. Let's start getting the cockpit together with the original rental bars from the bike, new Van Motion Pro cables, Motion Pro throttle and Artec levers and perches. I used 2 clutch sets and turned the brake side upside down, as no one seems to be making a drum brake lever and perch anymore. I don't know why. Can't be much of a market, eh? Lovely. Beautiful. Looking really good. Let's get the back end sorted out and get all the linkage bearings and bushings replaced. The old ones were pretty nasty, and Dave, all those years ago, had bought genuine Honda bushes and bolts for the linkage. So everything was nice and tight when rebuilt, exactly as Mr. Honda had intended. Finally, with only a couple of days left until Dave's birthday surprise, the front spokes landed. So the front wheel built, a new tyre installed to match the rear. It looks just as good as the rear, and we all know that a nice set of wheels really sets a bike off. I was still waiting on some critical bits. Custom stickers and seat cover coming from Susie at Evo MX. She promised to get them out to me for delivery on the Tuesday for me to get the bike finished off, ready for collection. On the Monday though, she had a disaster with the power station on her estate setting on fire, so she wasn't able to dispatch on the Monday. Getting down to the wire for sure. I'm also waiting on the brake plates being painted by my good mate Oliver again. They're magnesium and one was cracked, so one of my other mates, Jonathan, used his magnesium welding skills to repair it and get it ready to be painted. Thanks lads. As promised, the stickers and seat cover arrived on the Wednesday. So the seat cover went straight off to my local seat guys, Jack and Dave, to get that installed, and I was able to collect it at 9 AM the following day. Thanks for the quick turnaround, lads. So back on to getting everything finished off. And I always find this is the part where I need to start making things to get everything to fit right. So I needed to make a rear brass bush for the rear brake pedal, which looked and worked great. And time to get some of the plastics and the graphics on there. If you're wondering, at this stage, the engine hadn't run. So on to getting the silencer installed and time to fire it up. It wouldn't fire before, so it was getting a bit of a weak spark, so I've just swapped the coil over for a brand new one, and we'll show you the result there. So now she's sounding really sweet and starting to look the part too. Happy days. The plastics and graphics make all the difference. And now with the seat being back from being recovered, she looks almost finished. I just need those pesky brake plates from Oliver, as the brakes are now the last bits to sort out. Oliver came through on them and I got them late afternoon on the Thursday. Simon said he was going to be at mine early Friday. He must like early mornings, that fella. So let's get the rear installed first. In all the bits, I must have used the wrong brake plate. as the brake cable doesn't reach the brake actuator. A bit of out of the box thinking, and I took a stock cable and adjuster and I made a brass barrel to go in the actuator, which the adjuster could thread into, and then another small barrel with a lock screw to hold the cable in place in the adjuster. Happy days. Lovely job. Looks really good. Now just a case of fitting the front brake plate and shoes. But another disaster. The shoes I had were completely wrong. Not even similar. At almost midnight on Thursday night, this wasn't looking good for the early morning collection. Anyway, I had one hope of an old friend who might have a set I could collect in the morning. Amazingly, he did. I managed to get the kids to school, collect the shoes and get back to the workshop for 9:30. Simon had only been waiting there a bit after his 6-hour drive. The shoes went in and the bike looked stunning. Simon was a really, really happy boy. We got her fired up after Simon had accidentally been leaning on the kill switch, preventing her from firing. Thanks, mate. Probably only the third time she'd run since the engine rebuild. I love the sweet, slow revving sound of a big bore two-stroke. There's also something really cool about how the sheer power makes the chain and the rear fender wobble when the engine is just idling. I love it. I don't know what it is. It seemed criminal not to ride it, so I did a quick lap of the garden to make sure that everything was working fine, which it was. The whole thing looks and sounds amazing. I was really pleased with how this build had turned out, although it had caused me a bit of stress, especially getting close to the deadline. I hope Dave loves this bike as much as I do, and I hope he rides it. That's the thing. It was great doing this build, and definitely got me focused on finishing it in time. I complete all kinds of work for people on all kinds of bikes, from old to new, 2-stroke to 4-stroke, from full restorations like this one to engine builds, suspension work, etc. Plus, I get a lot of work from people who've got problems with their bikes that they can't iron out. Maybe the bike is low on power or whatever. Happy to look at it all. If you want me to take a look, or even just want some advice, give me a shout on 01772 394 150 or email matt@phoenixmotos.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, guys. On to the next build.